She was just a waitress, until one photo changed everything. Riley Bennett thought it would be just another night serving champagne to the elite at a lavish estate she could never afford to dream of. But as she walked past a quiet hallway in the Hawthorne mansion, something stopped her dead in her tracks. A black and white photo, framed on the wall, showed a little girl smiling sweetly. It was innocent, unassuming, but Riley froze. Her tray trembled in her hands. Her heart pounded. Because that little girl was her. How could her childhood photo be hanging inside a billionaire's home she'd never set foot in? She didn't come here to search for answers. But the moment she saw that photo, she knew. Someone was hiding the truth. Someone very powerful. And if she wanted to uncover it, she'd have to risk everything. What Riley was about to discover would shatter a family legacy, expose a deadly cover-up, and lead to the most emotional reunion you'll ever witness. You won't believe where this story goes. Stay tuned to the end, because the final twist will leave you speechless. Riley had worked dozens of events before, but none quite like this. The Hawthorne Estate in Charleston, South Carolina, was the kind of place that looked like it belonged in a movie. Towering white columns, manicured hedges, a marble driveway that shimmered under the golden hour light. As she stepped out of the catering van, Riley tightened the straps on her apron and took a breath. Just another shift, she whispered to herself, masking the nerves fluttering in her stomach. At 23, Riley was no stranger to hard work. Raised by adoptive parents who struggled to make ends meet, she'd been juggling 2 jobs since she was 17. Tonight's gig, serving at an exclusive gala hosted by the influential Hawthorne family, was meant to be just another paycheck. But from the moment she stepped through the back entrance of the estate, something felt off. Frederick, the stern head butler, greeted her with cold efficiency. "No talking to guests, eyes down. Do your job right, and you'll leave with your pay." She nodded, clutching the silver tray tighter. As the sun dipped behind the trees, guests began to pour in. Powerful politicians, CEOs, socialites dressed in designer gowns. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above the ballroom like frozen stars. A string quartet played softly in the corner, and the air was thick with money and secrets. Riley wove through the crowd, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvres. She tried to focus, but something about the house gnawed at her. A strange tension lingered, like a whisper just out of earshot. And then she saw it. A narrow corridor that branched off from the main hall, dimly lit and seemingly forgotten. She knew she shouldn't. The rules were clear: stay in the service areas. But curiosity tugged at her stronger than reason. Glancing around to make sure no one was watching, Riley slipped down the hallway. The lights were soft, almost antique, casting long shadows on the walls. Portraits of solemn men and elegant women lined the hallway. Members of the Hawthorne lineage, no doubt. And then she stopped. Midway down the corridor hung a single photo in a thin black frame. A picture of a young girl, no older than 5. Her brown hair curled around her cheeks, and her eyes, large, expressive, and unmistakably familiar, locked with Riley's. She staggered backward. It was her. Riley stared in disbelief. There was no mistaking it. The dress, the dimples, the small scar above the eyebrow she'd had since childhood. This photo, taken years before she'd been adopted, was of her as a little girl. But how? Why was it here? She had never set foot in this house in her life. The sound of footsteps snapped her back to reality. In a rush, she darted back toward the ballroom, her heart pounding in her chest. She resumed serving drinks, but the weight of the discovery clung to her like a shadow. Her hands trembled as she placed flutes on tables. The smiles of the guests blurred into the background. Her mind replayed the image again and again. Who had placed that photo in the hallway? And what did it mean? She needed answers. But who could she ask without sounding insane? Later that night, during a brief pause in the kitchen, Riley struck up a quiet conversation with Martha, the estate's longtime cook. "You've worked here a long time, right?" Riley asked as casually as she could. "Long enough to have more secrets than recipes," Martha chuckled, dicing carrots with practiced precision. "And the Hawthorne family, have they always lived here?" "Oh, honey, this estate's been in their bloodline for generations. Charles Hawthorne inherited it after his brother Andrew and sister-in-law passed in an accident." "Tragic story." Riley froze. His brother died in an accident? Martha nodded. Car crash, years ago. People say it was just bad luck, but who really knows? The pit in Riley's stomach deepened. That night, back at her small apartment in Edgewood, she lay awake in bed. Her adoptive parents were asleep, unaware of the storm brewing inside her. Her thoughts raced. If the girl in the photo was really her, then why was it hanging in a house owned by Charles Hawthorne? And if the man was connected to her in any way, why had no one ever told her? Sleep didn't come easy. The next evening, Riley returned to the estate under the guise of another catering job. But her true goal was clear. She needed to find that photo again. She waited until a lull in the festivities and slipped back down the mysterious hallway. But this time, the wall was empty. The photo was gone. What would you do if you found a childhood photo of yourself in a stranger's mansion? Do you think Charles Hawthorne knows who Riley really is? Could Riley be connected to the powerful Hawthorne family by blood? Comment your theories below. If you were Riley, would you dig deeper or walk away? Drop a yes in the comments if you'd go back for answers. Riley stood frozen in front of the empty wall. The black frame photo was gone, vanished as if it had never existed. Her breath caught in her throat. She rubbed her eyes, half wondering if it had all been in her head. But no, she remembered every detail of that picture. That little girl smiling at the camera, it was her. She knew it. Why would someone remove it? Did they see her looking at it? A chilling thought ran through her mind. Someone knew she had been snooping. Swallowing her panic, Riley returned to the kitchen and forced herself to finish her shift. But every clink of silverware and every pair of eyes that glanced her way now felt like a threat. She left the Hawthorne estate that night with a head full of questions and a heart pounding with dread. The next morning, she sat at the breakfast table with her adoptive mom, Gloria, who had just poured her coffee. Riley stirred the mug absent-mindedly, staring into the swirl of cream. Mom, do you remember where I came from? Before the adoption? Gloria paused mid-sip. That's a strange question, honey. Why do you ask? I just feel like there's something missing, Riley said slowly. I saw a photo last night that looked exactly like me. As a child, in a house I've never been to before. Gloria's hands trembled slightly as she set the mug down. Riley, you know we never got much information. You were found in a shelter when you were around 5. They told us your parents died in an accident, but that's all they said. Riley's heart dropped. An accident? A car accident? Yes, I think that's what the social worker told us. Why? The coincidence was too much. She couldn't ignore it anymore. Later that week, Riley returned to the estate under another catering assignment. She needed to get back inside, to uncover the truth. She wasn't sure how far she'd go, but she had to try. While the guests mingled and the orchestra played, Riley navigated the mansion like a ghost. Every chandelier, every oil painting seemed to watch her. She took her time, observing the staff. If someone had removed the photo, they'd know something. Maybe they were hiding more. In the staff hallway, she found Marcus, one of the longtime security guards. He was quiet but polite, a man who had likely seen it all. She approached during a coffee break. You've worked here a long time, haven't you? She asked. 23 years, he replied with a grunt. Back before Mr. Charles even inherited the place. Riley hesitated. Do you remember what happened to his brother? Marcus raised an eyebrow, his eyes narrowing. Andrew? Yeah. He and his wife died in a crash. Everyone said it was an accident. Did they have a daughter? She asked, barely breathing. He looked away for a moment, then leaned in. Rumors say they had a kid, a little girl, disappeared around the same time. Some say she died with them. Others say she was taken somewhere. Riley's chest tightened. It's me, she wanted to scream, but she held it in. Why all the secrecy? She asked. Marcus's voice dropped. Because people around here don't ask questions. Charles took control of everything after the crash. Fast. Too fast. And when folks started digging, they either quit or got quiet real quick. That night, Riley's world tilted further. What Marcus said haunted her. If she was Andrew Hawthorne's daughter, why had her life been erased from the family's history? Why hadn't Charles looked for her? Or had he? She needed more. The next day, Riley arranged to meet a retired staff member who used to work in the estate. Eleanor, a housekeeper with a reputation for being sharp and loyal to Andrew. Riley tracked her down through a mutual connection and visited her in a small home outside Charleston. Eleanor welcomed her with a warm smile but cautious eyes. "Riley, right? I heard you've been working at the estate." "Yes, ma'am. I needed to ask you something about the accident and about a little girl." Eleanor's face turned pale. "Oh, child. That house still breathing old ghosts?" "I think I'm one of them," Riley said softly. Eleanor sat down slowly. "I remember you. You were 5. Your mama called you Ray. You used to dance around the garden in a yellow dress. Andrew adored you. So did Helena." Riley's throat tightened. "So what happened? Why don't I remember any of it?" Eleanor looked her dead in the eyes. "Because Charles made sure you wouldn't." A silence fell over the room, thick with truth. "After the crash, you disappeared. The authorities said the girl died too, but your body was never found. And then Charles, he took over. The estate, the companies, everything. Rumor was, he paid off people, cleaned the past." Riley stared at her own trembling hands. Her childhood hadn't been lost, it had been stolen. "I found a photo of me in the estate, but it disappeared." Eleanor sighed. "Then he knows. Charles always had eyes everywhere." Riley's mind spun. All these years she'd lived thinking she was unwanted, abandoned. But now she knew the truth had been buried. Deliberately, the next time she stepped into the estate, Riley no longer felt like a server. If you were Riley and discovered your childhood photo in a billionaire's mansion, would you confront the powerful man who possibly stole your past? Type yes in the no if you'd walk away quietly. Riley returned to the Hawthorne estate with her heart pounding and a single mission echoing in her mind. Find the safe, uncover the truth, and expose Charles Hawthorne. Every room in that mansion now felt haunted by silence, by secrets, by the weight of her stolen past. She had discovered that Charles had hidden everything, the truth about the crash that killed her parents, the erasure of her identity, and perhaps even clues to her mother's fate. But Eleanor had given her one last lead. Charles's private study. That was where he kept everything valuable, including a hidden safe. She waited for the perfect opportunity, and it came 2 days later. Charles left the mansion for a business trip, according to chatter among the staff. The estate was quiet. Riley put on her catering uniform as usual, but had no intention of serving cocktails that night. Instead, she slipped away and made her way to the 3rd floor, toward Charles's forbidden study. The door creaked open. Dust particles floated in the golden sunlight, pouring through tall windows. The room smelled of cigar smoke and aged wood. A massive mahogany desk stood at the center. Bookshelves lined the walls, and in the corner, barely visible behind a painting, Riley found it. The safe. She pushed the painting aside, revealing a digital lock. Her fingers trembled. She remembered what Marcus had told her. Charles never forgot the day his brother died. The date of the accident. She punched in the numbers. 04/19/2005. Click. The lock released. The door opened with a heavy groan. Inside were documents, ledgers, flash drives, and an old envelope. Riley grabbed everything she could, stuffing it into her bag. But it was the envelope that made her hands freeze. It was addressed in delicate handwriting, "To my daughter Ray." Her knees buckled. With tears forming in her eyes, she carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. "My sweet Ray, if you are reading this, it means the worst has happened. Your father and I knew we were in danger, and we tried everything to protect you. If anything happens to us, promise me you'll grow up safe. Charles, your uncle, is not who he pretends to be. He wants the inheritance, the control, the name. Don't trust him, but never forget who you are. Ray Evelyn Hawthorne. You are our daughter, our everything. Love, Mom." Riley broke down, clutching the letter to her chest. Everything was real. Her parents had feared this. Her uncle had taken it all and erased her like she never existed. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the hallway. She stuffed the documents into her bag and closed the safe, but it was too late. The door opened. Charles stood there, his cold eyes locking onto hers. "Well," he said slowly, voice like steel, "I was wondering when you'd come looking for answers." Riley stood tall, though her body shook. I know everything. I know what you did to my parents, and I know who I am. Charles laughed, the sound bitter. You think anyone will believe a girl from a shelter over me? You were a mistake, Ray. Just like your father. Too soft to lead this family. I have proof, she snapped. Documents, letters, the truth. I'm going to the press. His expression darkened. Then you're not walking out of here. In that instant, Riley bolted. She ran down the hall as Charles shouted for his security. Adrenaline flooded her body as she tore through the mansion's corridors, gripping the bag like her life depended on it. Because it did. She burst through the back door and sprinted to her car. Tires screeched as she pulled away, heart racing. Behind her, Charles stood in the driveway, watching her go. But she had the upper hand now. The next day, Riley met with an investigative journalist who'd been chasing whispers of the Hawthorne family for years. She handed over the documents, the letter, and the truth. Within 48 hours, headlines exploded. Scandal at the Hawthorne estate, CEO under investigation for inheritance fraud and conspiracy to cover up family tragedy. The media swarmed. Charles's empire began to crumble. And for the first time, Riley felt like she could breathe. But the story wasn't over. A week later, a breaking news segment aired footage of a woman being escorted out of a private psychiatric clinic just outside Nashville. She looked frail, with graying hair and distant eyes. But Riley knew that face. It was her mother. She dropped everything and raced to the clinic. When she walked into the room and saw the woman seated by the window, Riley could barely speak. "Mom," she whispered. The woman turned, eyes widening. "Ray." Tears flowed freely as they embraced. Two souls torn apart by greed, finally reunited. The doctors said her mother had suffered trauma-induced amnesia. Charles had hidden her away, claiming she had died. But Riley's courage had brought the truth to light. Riley later testified in court against Charles. Her story and the documents led to his arrest and conviction. The Hawthorne name, once synonymous with wealth and prestige, now became a cautionary tale of betrayal and justice. Riley chose not to take back the estate or fortune. She wanted something more valuable: peace, truth, and time with her mother. They moved to a quiet town in Vermont and opened a community center for orphans and displaced children, giving others the home she never had. And every morning, as Riley watched the sunrise with her mother at her side, she whispered to herself, "I'm finally free." And what do you think about Riley's story? Was justice truly served? If this story moved you or kept you on the edge of your seat, drop a comment with number 100 below and share your thoughts. We'd love to hear your reaction.